Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, thank you for taking time during the election campaign to come to the Guardian offices and speak to Full Story. We have a lot we'd like to get through, so let's get started.
Wonderful. Great to be here at the Guardian.
Thank you. We'll begin with some international matters first. Since you took office, many foundational assumptions about the world have dramatically changed. Under Donald Trump, the US is abandoning key international institutions. US alliances don't seem to matter to them as much as they once did. The US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, says that the post-war global order is not just obsolete, it is now a weapon being used against the United States. You conducted a defence strategic review soon after taking office, but given how much has changed, don't we desperately need to reevaluate?
You're right to say we certainly live in uncertain times, and some of the old assumptions have changed. What we will see, I think, over the coming months, certainly, if not years, is an assessment being made of what the impact of all that is. What does all this mean? The United States, if they continue to retreat from the global role that they've played, then that does change the global political dynamic. We are in a region with strategic competition between the two superpowers, the United States and China. It's unclear at this stage what the impact of the US's retreat on issues like foreign aid, on climate policy that's so important to the Pacific, how this will all play out. We, though, through the Defence Strategic Review, our priority was very much on what is in our national interest to defend Australia as an island continent located where we are. So I think the assumptions or framework of that review was very much about our national interest, and therefore I certainly hope that it's the case that it continues to be cognizant of the new dynamic.
Do you intend to, though you mentioned at the beginning of your answer, to reevaluate in the coming months?
We think we got it right, because essentially what the Defence Strategic Review said in short and in more simple terms was we needed more things that go bang. We need more things that defend our national interests, that a lot of our focus on our defence capacity or capability was a product of the fact that we had participated in military conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan. So we had tanks, we had vehicles that were suited to that. And what the Defence Strategic Review essentially found was, one, that Australia's defence location should move north, so increased assets located in our northern ports and northern parts of Australia. Secondly, that because we're an island continent, submarines and our naval capacity, which had been downgraded effectively, not consciously, well, perhaps not publicly declared that was what was occurring, but that was the case, that we needed to look at increasing our assets towards that frame. And thirdly, that we needed things like what we're doing, the capacity to have medium and long-range missile capacity as well. And later this year, we'll be developing our own capacity to manufacture here.
On trade, PM, global trade has also been turned on its head in recent months, and we've been caught in the crossfire of a trade war. You've got new funds for steel makers and other policies to react, to respond to what we're seeing in the global environment. But from what we're seeing from the US, from China, should we be looking for new alliances with other countries now that still back free trade?
Well, fortunately, we'd put a lot of effort into the work that is now more important than at the time it was envisaged it would be. So Nicholas Moore did the Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040. That looked at all of the ASEAN countries. What are the comparative advantages that Australia has? What are the trading, the impediments to further trade which are there, country by country? And we released that. We have upgraded our relationship with India in our region. We, of course, have restored relations with China. We have a free trade agreement has been established with the United Arab Emirates. That's a gateway to the Middle East. So we had certainly diversified a lot of our trading relationships already, and that has proven to be a very wise thing to do, given what's occurring with the United States and the position on trade that the Trump administration has developed.
Staying on international matters that are disrupting the rules-based order, I'd like to ask you about Gaza. For many in Labor-held seats, Gaza will be front of mind when they head to the ballot box. When you first began calling for a ceasefire, close to 20,000 Palestinians had already been killed. That number has now surpassed 50,000, and Israeli leaders are wanted for war crimes. Do you regret not joining earlier international calls for a ceasefire? And what do you say to people who feel let down?
What I say is that we have taken a principled position. When my government was elected, we reversed the designation of the capital of Israel back to Tel Aviv, from where the former government had unilaterally made the decision about Jerusalem. We had already doubled our aid to the occupied territories, to Gaza and the West Bank through UNRWA. We had changed our voting patterns in a range of ways in the United Nations. October 7 happened. October 7 was a terrorist attack where innocent people, innocent Israelis, were murdered, and where atrocities were committed. Hamas has engaged in acts of terrorism and has a terrorist ideology. They, of course, took hostages into Gaza, and Israel has a right to defend itself.
Prime Minister,
but what we said very clearly at the time was how it defends itself matters as well. We declared in the resolution that the House of Representatives carried just after the immediate sitting after October 7. I think if you go back and have a look at that resolution, it stands the test of time, frankly. We spoke about all innocent lives mattering. It spoke about the need for peaceful resolution in the medium and longer term as well. We continue to support a Palestinian state as well as an Israeli state being side by side with peace and security in the region. We have continued to call for ceasefire. We've increased our aid to Gaza. We continue to call for the release of hostages as well. We want to see a Palestinian state. We don't believe that Hamas can play a role in that state. And importantly as well, for the debate here in Australia, there's been a lot of misinformation, including that Australia somehow is arming Israel. That is not true. It is also just a fact that Australia is not a major player in the Middle East, but we have not just voted for ceasefire. We've also had a range of joint statements issued by myself, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Christopher Luxon, and the former Prime Minister now of Canada, Justin Trudeau. And we have attempted to play as a country that isn't a major player in the Middle East, a constructive role advocating peace.
UN experts say that acts of genocide have been committed. Is there anything that you would have done differently?
Well, we have not been participants. That's the point here. And one of the things about Australia, and where I think a majority of the Australian people are, is one, they don't want to see a loss of innocent life, whether that be Israeli or Palestinian. And this has been a traumatic time for communities that have family and friends and loved ones in either Israel or Gaza or Lebanon, people who've been impacted by this escalation of the conflict. We have put our views directly as well to Israel and to, as well as I had a discussion with Abu Mazen and of the Palestinian Authority. I have been a long-term advocate for a Palestinian state, but you can't have a Palestinian state progressed without also supporting Israel. A one-state solution is a recipe for one of the things for Palestinians continuing to suffer because Israelis will fight for their right to continue to exist, and they have a much greater military capacity. And so my concern has been, one, to support peace in the region, but secondly also to not bring conflict here.
Prime Minister, we might just pivot to some domestic issues
Yeah,
now.
I wanted to ask you about housing, Prime Minister. Claire O'Neill, the housing minister, you've been talking a lot about housing this week, obviously. She said, we've got a housing crisis in our country that's been a generation in the making. You don't seem to use that term very often, so I'll ask you now, do you believe Australia is in a housing crisis?
Well, I think certainly if you're a young person trying to get into housing, it seems as if it's further away than it has been for some time. We don't have enough housing supply. I try not to use for, everything can be used with strong adjectives. Certainly, if you're trying to get into housing, then it can be really difficult. Rentals are really difficult. What we have done is to have a comprehensive plan, $43 billion Homes for Australia plan, a plan about increasing supply we see as the absolute key to making a difference.
So on that as well, I mean, you're obviously I was with you over the campaign launch over the last few days, visited a lot of housing estates and new builds. You've spoken a lot about the suite of policies you've got to help people buy their first home, the 5% deposits, other measures to boost supply like the HAF, acknowledging all those policies. On the question of affordability, what's your ultimate aim? Is it for house prices to fall in absolute terms, or would you like them just to sort of rise a bit less steeply than they are now?
Well, my aim is for people to be able to get access to housing which is affordable.
But in terms of the prices?
That's my aim. And I don't swing at those pitches. What I do is say that we need to increase supply so that people can have home ownership as an option that they see as being viable. Also, so that by increasing supply, you therefore put downward pressure on rentals. Also, so that you have more access for social housing. I'm a proud houser. I grew up not far from here and went to school with a whole lot of public housing tenants when there was a lot more of it in the inner city of Sydney than there is now. There was less public housing in New South Wales when the coalition government lost the last state election than there was when they were elected 12 years earlier. That's a disgrace. And so what we're doing is beefing up public housing, having more private rentals through our build-to-rent scheme. In addition to that, we do have a range of policies helping people into home ownership, whether that be through shared equity, through Help to Buy, or the 5% deposits so that people are paying off their own mortgage rather than someone else's.
Prime Minister, what about on the environment? You were unable to deliver on your 2022 promise to establish a federal environmental protection agency. You've now committed to pursue a different model if re-elected. How will it be different to what was shelved during this term of government?
Well, we couldn't get our model passed by the Senate. We have 25 votes out of 76, and at no stage did we have agreement. We got it passed through the House of Representatives last July, and we just couldn't get the support there. People tried to link a whole range of other things with it. We think that an EPA is important, and we're going to call it an Environmental Protection Authority. What it is, I'm not sure people understood what nature positive meant, enabled some of the opponents of it to weaponise what it was, what it wasn't,
Prime
in
Minister,
fact.
You've said that you will consult with environmental and industry groups. Their views are proving irreconcilable. Who will Labor listen to?
Well, they're not irreconcilable at all. Indeed, I did a round table in the budget week with environmental groups, and I've also had discussions with people in business. What they both want is sustainability. What they want is certainty. What they want is things to happen faster rather than things just be clogged and held up. It is in the business community's interest to ensure there are approvals where appropriate, but it's also in everyone's interest for there to be sustainable outcomes.
I'd like to ask you about another sort of thorny issue, and that's gambling advertising. It's been, I think, nearly 2 years since Peter Murphy's report came out recommending a phase out of all online gambling ads, acknowledging all the reforms that your government has made around BetStop, around helping people who have issues with gambling and so forth. Could you make a promise to the people who worked alongside Peter Murphy on that report that your government in a second term would act on the central recommendation to phase in a ban on online gambling?
Well, there wasn't. You defined the report by one recommendation. There was a range of recommendations.
It was the central recommendation.
Well, no, reports don't have central recommendations. There were a range of recommendations, including a range of recommendations that have to be adopted by state and territory governments. We've done more on gambling reform than any government since Federation in our first term. We acknowledge that more needs to be done. We need to get it right. It is no good having changes that just then channel people into other forms of gambling, potentially offshore. There's a range of issues that have to be dealt with. But in our first term, I think we have had substantial reform, but we acknowledge that there is more to be done, and we'll work through those issues constructively in our second term if we are fortunate enough to be elected.
One of the things you haven't done, though, is respond to that report. It's been nearly 2 years. When will there be a response to that? Will there be a response to that, a formal parliamentary response from the government to the report more than almost 2 years ago?
Well, what we've been doing is going through piece by piece, putting in place a range of reforms. That's what we've been doing by responding, by setting up BetStop, by changing the way that people can use credit cards, by changing as well the statements after the ads from the benign into something that tells people that they're going to lose.
But it sounds like the as you say, the number of recommendations we can debate which one was central, which ones are not. But it sounds like you're not really up for addressing that particular one about phasing out online gambling ads.
What we're doing is working through all of the recommendations constructively, making sure that the general principle. The recommendation is, without picking out one of the, I think there were dozens of recommendations.
There were a large number, yeah,
there are dozens of recommendations. The main thing is, how do we address problem gambling? There's a range of ways that you can do that. in addition, one of the ways you can do that as well is by there being some changes made with some of the sponsorship, for example, that's occurred as well. And one of the things that the report has done and the debate has done is to lift up the profile of things such as sporting teams having gambling ads on the front of their jumpers and those sort of issues as well. So there's a whole range of cultural aspects that you have to deal with. This is about the law, but it's also about how we deal with these issues as a society.
I want to ask you about another significant issue that hasn't really featured on the election campaign or during this campaign. Your government describes violence against women as an epidemic. You've previously described it as a national crisis. Have you been told or briefed about the 2 cases where women have died over the last 4 days?
I have, and they're horrific. Every act of violence is one too many. This is a scourge. And it breaks my heart, the stories that we've heard, including the ones in recent days. A woman losing her life fleeing is horrific. My government has taken these issues seriously. I convened a full national cabinet on these issues, but it's been raised at a number of them. We have changed. We've encouraged state and territory governments to change laws, things like bail laws and those issues as well.
Is there more that can be done, Prime Minister? I know you have a national plan, Labor's injected more funding, but this is an issue that isn't, we're not really seeing the issue get better. Is there more that government can do?
Clearly we need to do more, and we need to do more as a society, but my government has a $4 billion commitment. On top of that, we committed, you might recall in the 2022 campaign, we committed to 500 additional community workers. That has now, I'm quite pleased that that was slow rolling out, getting people to fill those jobs. It's around about it's more than 450 of those positions are now in place, people making a difference in their local communities. We have put in place measures such as increased $100 million for housing, emergency accommodation for women and children escaping domestic violence. My government has introduced permanently the leaving violence payment. We have 10 days paid domestic and family violence leave so that people don't have to choose between maintaining employment and leaving a violent situation. So we have done at each and every level, but clearly we all need to do more because one of the issues that we need to address as well is the behaviour of men, and we need to have honest and open discussions about that, about how we improve.
Will you be funding more men's behaviour change programs?
Yes, we will. I mean, it's part of the program that we address through the National Cabinet process. That's just one of the measures. But this is truly as well a problem that can't simply be solved by government. It needs to be a discussion that men have with each other, that people need to call out aspects of violence when they see it. It can have a devastating impact, and often it is hidden, and it is something that it's unclear whether it's clear that it's a major problem. What isn't clear is how much of it was hidden before as well.
I'd like to shift gears just a little bit and maybe try and whip through a couple of
Sure.
ones before we have to let you go. It probably feels like you've only just finished the 2022 campaign a short time ago, and now we're halfway through 2025.
3 years is too short.
Well, this is exactly the question I was about to ask you. You've backed 4-year terms rather than 3. Peter Dutton has also said he backs 4-year terms. I know you said there won't be any referendums in your next term, I believe, but if you're both in agreement, why can't you get in a room together and make it happen? Will you at least try and give it a shot?
It's called trust. This is the guy who appointed Julian Leeser, who was one of the architects of The Voice, as his Shadow Attorney General and Shadow Minister for Indigenous Affairs, and then ran a campaign saying that if we had a voice for First Nations people about matters that affect them, which was just advisory only, that somehow they'd determine where our military bases would be and other information. So, Peter Dutton has spoken about 3 different referendums, including another one on constitutional recognition of First Nations people. The coalition have a history of doing this, and it's been put to referendums twice. And I was a young man working in the old Parliament House when the first one happened under Bob Hawke's government, working for Tommy Wren. And there was agreement there, and then the coalition went out there, changed their mind. And if you don't have bipartisanship, referendums have not much chance of success.
Okay, so it sounds like you're not planning on pushing on that one.
Unfortunately.
John Howard was once asked what his vision for Australia was. And he answered that he wanted Australians to be relaxed and comfortable. What is your response to that same question? How do you want Australians to feel?
That we're a land of opportunity and the fair go, where everyone can fulfil their potential, where we look after each other, and where we advance as a nation.
And Prime Minister, we do have a little bit more time with you. I was wondering, you've just wrapped up the second leaders' debate. We're almost 3 weeks into the campaign. Politicians all say they love campaigning, but what are the worst 3 things about the campaign trail and being on the road?
The pace of it. Just keeping today, I've done a trip to Brisbane and back, here to Sydney after a late night last night after the debate. I've done 2 media appearances, now 2 podcasts, and a range of phone conversations and a campaign meeting.
Did you just lump in podcasts with the 3 things you don't enjoy about being on the campaign trail?
No. It's all in just... The day is only 24 hours long. That's the biggest problem. But I do enjoy it. I think that security issues have been a bit of an impediment. I love doing just a street walk.
Right. Have you had to change behaviour significantly?
Well, I think people have probably seen the footage of some far-right people at my hotel in Melbourne. We live in a world where there is an escalation of extremism.
How much is that on your mind while you're out campaigning?
I try to put it out of my mind. The AFP Australian Federal Police do a fantastic job, but it is something that is considered. They will give advice about things that perhaps I shouldn't do, but I still will. On day 1 of the campaign, I went into a gym next to the urgent care clinic in Marumba Downs there in the electorate of Dixon. It happened to be just a cold walking in, 30 people in a gym. It's fantastic, that interaction, because people are more engaged during an election campaign than they are at other times. So I've done street walks, but without notice, in Adelaide and Perth, just engaging with people. So I do love that, but it's just that it's just so busy, and that makes it difficult. There are very long days, but I enjoy it. I get a buzz out of it, and the adrenaline kicks in, and you just keep going.
Nour might glare at me, but I've got to squeeze this one in before we finish up. You mentioned Dixon there, and I noticed you were there on obviously the first day of the campaign, and you mentioned why you're there. It's the most marginal seat in Queensland. Labor's putting a lot of resources into that seat. Are you going to win Dixon, or is that just to troll Peter Dutton, this whole push?
No, we're very serious about it, and Ailey France would be a fantastic addition to the National Parliament. She's amazing. She's an extraordinary woman who has come through a lot of adversity in her life, and has turned that adversity into a commitment to her local community. And I think her values are much more aligned with the community than Peter Dutton's are. And we're serious. We're serious about getting a majority government. And if you don't have a majority government, I was Leader of the House when Julia Gillard was the Prime Minister, and we did some really good things. It was a good government. I was proud to serve in it. But the truth is, a whole lot of the things got undone because we did not have a majority. And because it was easy for people to ask questions every day over whether the government would last the full term, you might recall. And indeed, Julia made the extraordinary decision, but one that I supported, of saying when the election would be later that year in 2013, just to stop the day-by-day asking of when the election was going to be.
Well, maybe we
would
need
the
4 year
government fall.
fixtures.
We do. We
There you
do.
go.
I agree with you.
Okay, Prime Minister, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very, very much. Have a great Easter.
You too.